This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Career Development webinar. We're glad to see you virtually, and ACC National Capital Region is pleased to present this program, ACC NCR Career Development, the Demand for Skilled Talent. I'm Richard Spitalnik, Senior Counsel of the American Red Cross, and I will serve as the chapter's host for today's seminar. This program will last 60 minutes and does not offer any CLE continuing education credits. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. As you just heard, this discussion is being recorded and will be available for you to download later. Our speakers' comments are their own. They should not be publicized without permission, should not be construed as legal advice, and do not represent the position of their employers, clients, or ACC NCR. We welcome your questions and encourage participation today. Please use the chat function located at the bottom of your screen. The presenters may not be able to respond to every question, but we'll try to address as many as possible. One other housekeeping note, which it looks like shouldn't be an issue, but please mute your audio or video if you haven't done so already. It looks like at least everybody I see is already muted, so that's great. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers, Patrick Doherty and Marina Wickner. Patrick is the Vice President and Practice Director at Robert Half. In his role, he places highly skilled legal professionals on a temporary, project, and full-time basis to law firms and corporate legal departments, including project staffing and implementation organization, contract attorneys, associate attorneys, corporate counsel, legal administrators, paralegals, litigation support, managers, and contract managers, administrators. Patrick has been with Robert Half for nearly a decade, previously holding positions as Assistant Vice President and Division Director, Director of Temporary Services, Division Director, and Account Executive. He graduated from Bucknell University in 2002 with a BA in Economics and English. He then went on to Suffolk University Law School and obtained his JD in 2007. Our other speaker, Marina Wickner, is the Vice President and Director of Permanent Placement Services at Robert Half in the Metro Washington, D.C. area. Ms. Wickner specializes in full cycle recruiting of all levels of legal professionals, including attorneys, paralegals, legal secretaries, executive assistants, contract managers, and legal sales professionals with both corporate legal departments and law firms. She has held roles as division director, recruiting manager, and account executive in the San Francisco Bay Area before moving back to DC. Ms. Wickner graduated from Georgetown University and received her JD from the American University Washington College of Law. Thanks everyone for being here today. Now I will turn the program over to Patrick, who will get us started.
Thanks, Rich. Nice to be here, everyone. Thank you for attending. I'm just going to pop up a couple slides. Bear with me. Marina, does that work?
Yep, I can see it, all set.
Great. Today we're going to talk to everyone about kind of the hiring market that we're seeing right now, demand for skilled talent. I know, I'm sure everyone on this call is feeling it right now. So Marina and I really want to kind of talk to you a little bit about, what we're seeing every day. We have boots on the ground, talk to candidates, clients every day, and it's a challenging time from the perspective of hiring talent and then also retaining talent. So you can look at this presentation in one of two ways. One way is how good of a time it is to look for a job right now. And Marina and I are always happy to talk to anyone on this call for their specific job search. Or to reach us, LinkedIn, we're very accessible. But number two, hiring and retaining your people in your legal department, right? That's going to be the focus because, companies are being forced to adapt, offered new, things that they never in the past even considered offering to their employees. And that can range from, fully remote opportunities to hybrid schedules to, bonus, signing bonuses. So we're gonna kind of touch on that, touch on it all. And the tone of this, presentation is really going to be, hopefully you walk away from it with some, tactics to be able to, keep your department intact. I know how hard it is to find people, and this day and age, this year, but also 5 years ago, it was really hard to find recruiters and sales professionals for our organization. You spent time, hours, training them on on what on what you do, only to lose them because of whatever reason. They moved on to other opportunities. They just weren't into the job like they thought they were going to be. So we really want to provide you with some advice and pointers on how to, number one, hire effectively, and then also keep the people, that you value in their seats. So with that, I'm going to kind of also, let you know and give you a heads up that there are a lot of statistics that we're going to be throwing at you, a lot of numbers. Where those numbers come from are surveys that we conduct to our candidates, clients all over the country. Robert Half is a publicly traded, company. We're, one of the largest staffing professional talent organizations in the world. And, we really take these surveys very seriously. So a lot of the numbers that we show you are going to be kind of shocking, what we're hearing, what you're going to be hearing just based on, the surveys of, our clients and candidates. But they're pretty on point, and they're reinforced by what Marina and I are seeing every day when we kind of turn on our laptops and, start looking for people. So, I'll start by, kind of talking about some broad numbers. Unemployment rate is 4%. I think it probably dipped below that a little bit. Or no, I think it dipped below that in December and then shot up a little, percentage point from 3.9 to 4%. The economy is continuing to grow. Employers are shifting to hybrid workplace, combining, remote employees with on-site. So they have kind of like both, where they're, trying to integrate into teams and everything. There were 10.9 million job openings, based on our numbers in December. And that's the most recent number. And that's up 1.7 million since July. So just over the course of 6 months. Quit levels are continuing to increase substantially from 3.6 million in July 2021 to 4.3 million in December 2021. Some have doubled. The Great Resignation is, what we've all been hearing on the news, and what this period, in time has been dubbed. So employees are seeking more fulfilling and rewarding positions that align with their values and interests more, or leaving the workforce altogether. I think that's certainly at play here. This is a term that isn't foreign to Marina and I, who have been doing this for a long time in the recruiting. I feel like I could have coined this term 10 years ago, but we're seeing more and more of this, unfortunately. Employers left in the dark. And employers are frustrated. They spend a lot of time, meeting and, talking with the candidate, making sure that they're a right fit, making sure that they're a right fit for their teams from skill set standpoint, from personality perspective, and then candidate cuts off all contact and vanishes at some point during the recruiting process. So nearly 40% of employers have been ghosted by candidates more often since the pandemic started. 33% of the candidates have been ghosted potential employers because of a poor interview process. Poor interview process is lack of organization, lack of coordination, lack of communication, right? Like if it drags out, I think what Marina and I have been seeing a lot of is that, candidates get frustrated and they have other options. I think that's really what it boils down to. candidates are throw their hat on the ring, decide that they want to test the job market. When they actually throw their hat out there, they're finding that they're not just getting one call. They're getting 3, 4, 5 potential opportunities put on their plate, and they're able to sort of be very selective. So right now it's more important than ever to I don't know, like shift your mindset where you have to, of course, put them through an interview process. But if you like someone, number one, you have to court them a little bit, right? You have to highlight, why they should join your company, and not just take the mindset of, oh, this is a great company. They're going to be, and just make the assumption that they're going to, be on board if you extend that offer. Not thinking that they might have 2 or 3 other offers on the table. So, why candidates reject job offers? So again, they're very, very selective. Multiple offers in the current job market. A lot of times it's not salary, right? Like, we've all been living in this pandemic world, the past 2 years. We all went remote. Employers found, I think, from the conversations that I have had, have really had a challenge getting people back into the office, right? Like, you've given them a taste of, what it's like to, roll out of bed, have a cup of coffee, and then just sit at their desk and start working, not have to worry about that metro ride or jumping in the car and sitting in traffic. So, asking them to go back to the normal routine that where we were in 2019, early part of 2020, I think employers are struggling with that a little bit. So candidates definitely want a more flexible work schedule, and we hear it every day. That's a big part. It's definitely become a hotter topic when we talk to candidates about what they're looking for than numbers. And salaries have always led the charge on that front. Hiring managers, again, take too long. Like, if you really like a candidate, and if you work with Marina and I, we're constantly trying to push decisions to be made, because we know, we're talking to candidates, how many opportunities that they have on their plate. And it's not because we want to make the placement, which obviously we do, but it's more about, we know that we're going to lose this candidate. And if we lose this candidate, then we're starting from square one. So all the work that has gone into meeting that candidate, putting them through the interview process, is all for nothing if we lose them to another opportunity because we're taking too long. And that's very much in our control. And then obviously, salaries, is up there too. And that, I don't see that going away. But, it's also important to recognize the candidates are becoming prepared. Salary data is very accessible to them. I think that they research, they ask questions, they know the market. And so I think with that, and my dad always told me, he's like, you're happy in your job, that's great, but always know your value, right? Like, always, what you make sure you're getting compensated fairly. So you always want to, see what else is out there, and, take calls to poke around. I think that's really good advice. I discuss salaries with colleagues. I mean, I do think that there's an element of that, but also social media, right? Like, I just think, communication and, everything, that has risen from, those social media sites, has allowed for much more, sharing of information to your, counterparts at another law firm or in another legal department. Again, back to, this is a great time to look for a job. If you're unhappy, there's opportunity out there. 65% of employers who we surveyed are looking to add permanent direct hired people this year, the first half of 2022. 33% are hiring for roles have left vacant, right? Someone has moved from your company to another company. You got to backfill that role. It's not as easy as it was, 3 or 4 years ago. And then 2% have a hiring freeze, which that's a very low number. I actually, in talking to clients, I haven't heard a lot of that. I used to hear that all the time, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think I'm recalling, I don't think I have one client they'll say that they're fully staffed, but there's no hiring freezes right now. I think everyone kind of recognizes that even if they have a full department, that they want to be smart and they want to pipeline and keep people on the back burner if and when, frankly, one of their employees leaves. Employers' plans for contracts positions. So, bringing in a contractor to help out with workflow doesn't increase your head count, but, if you have work to be done, 71% say that they're going to increase their utilization of outside consultants. So whether it's a contract attorney through us or, outside counsel, leading on outside counsel. It just every time I get on the phone with a corporate counsel, general counsel, it's like, I'm sure you've heard this, we're operating with our hair on fire right now. We need help. So, vast majority of, of legal departments, law firms are looking to increase staff first part of 2022. 20%, no change. They're just holding steady. And then 7% decreasing. With that, I am going to turn it over to you, Marina, to talk a little bit about some industry trends that we're seeing.
Yep, absolutely. So thanks so much, Patrick. So just kind of wanted to start off with the hiring trends that we're seeing as far as just who is most likely to hire. I would argue that it's kind of everybody right now. I mean, I think that we are seeing hiring all over the board in terms of, the corporate counsel, the senior corporate counsel, et cetera, in-house positions that we're seeing. So these are sort of overall general industry trends: the administrative and support services, information technology, business and professional services, which of course does encompass the legal industry, advertising, media and publishing, and then finance and insurance. But really, in terms of the types of companies that we are seeing coming to us for legal staff, it's and the types of positions, it is really a lot of positions based in contracts, whether, depending on what level that's at. We're seeing everything from corporate counsel with a few years of experience to more of a managing counsel position with, more around 7 to 15 years of experience, seeing a lot in the privacy space. And even if a position is not specifically tagged as privacy necessarily, I think a lot of clients are sort of adding that into other positions in some ways. So it is a component of a lot of roles, even if they may not be, strictly a privacy counsel role or something like that. So that's just kind of what we are seeing most commonly as far as the types of roles that we're filling in the in-house space right now. If you want to go to the next slide, Patrick. All right. So these are some of the actions that, employers are trying to take. It looks like Patrick might be having a little bit, there we go, of technical difficulties there. So these are some of the actions that employers are specifically trying to take. And so this is coming from the employer perspective, not based on what candidates are looking for, but this is what these are the trends in terms of what employers are actually trying to offer. So of course they have upped their salary the more remote work options has been huge. We've seen, a lot even through the course of our search who have gone from, either being 100% on site or hybrid to 100% remote in order to widen their candidate pool. And I would say, honestly, obviously you have to offer a market salary, but from my perspective, in terms of what I'm seeing, the thing that can have the biggest impact for sure on your hiring pool is the remote work piece. So, as long as your salary is sort of in the market range, I think the remote work piece is what can really increase your pool at this point. And then getting creative. I think somebody might be off mute. Let's see here. And then followed by signing bonuses, additional paid time off, and then just kind of changing the requirements. Maybe if an employer has some room to do some training in certain areas, that's also, that's great, because that also, as you'll see on our next slide, kind of goes into providing employees with advancement opportunities, which is kind of something that people are interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, Marina, I think that's a good point. As far as like,
I'm sorry, we're getting a lot of background noise.
Yeah, I can't see I have the slides up. So
I can't tell either where it's coming from.
I think it's good, but I would say, like, just if you think about the pool of candidates out there who are out there looking for work, I think it's probably safe to say that if you require that candidate to be in the office 5 days a week, you are basically shrinking that pool by 50%. So you're eliminating a lot of potentially top people just by requiring them in the office. So, if you think about it, you might have, if that is your policy, you might have to settle for a less qualified candidate than you would get someone, if you had that expanded pool of candidates.
I would agree. And I know that we're kind of thinking about this in our legal departments as a whole. So, I would say those remote options are frequently being offered at the paralegal, and then usually even hybrid options at the, at kind of the support staff level. So just something to be clear about. It doesn't only apply to attorneys. So in terms of why folks are coming to us, what they're telling us they're looking for, of course, salary is still number one. Honestly, so of course, benefits is important. The number one things are going to be healthcare, and what is the cost of contribution to that? What is the cost to cover a spouse? And then 401k, those are sort of the most important benefits and perks that I get asked about. This ability to work remotely long-term, I would say for me, when I get folks coming to me, and this is considering, in-house corporate counsel, but really across the board, I would say it's far more than 34% who are looking to work remotely in some capacity, maybe not 100% remotely, but looking to have some of that flexibility. I would say it's far higher than 34%, just to dovetail off what Patrick said, regarding that you are truly shrinking your candidate pool if you're looking for somebody to be 5 days a week in the office. And so then that's followed up by, of course, people are looking for advancement opportunities, and then more appreciation and recognition, which definitely comes up frequently, unfortunately, in what I'm seeing with candidates. So we can go to the next slide, Patrick. So kind of already touched on this a bit, but this is very general, stating that attorneys and lawyers and then paralegals and legal assistants are sort of the most in demand. But just to again go into a little more depth, again, the skill sets that we're really seeing moving the most quickly are in the contract space, in the privacy space, I would say. I would follow that up with probably the compliance space generally. But those are the top areas that we're seeing, at least in our market, as well as, so I also heavily cover North Carolina. So just, I would say for the entire mid-Atlantic, that's kind of what we're seeing. You know, on the paralegal and legal assistant side, you know, the demand is really on the corporate and the real estate and the transactional side. For those things. And then, you know, just kind of mentioning, I think these other positions, honestly, the top three go along with really what I said that we're seeing, again, those trends in contracts and privacy, and then followed up with some litigation as well. All right. So again, I think this just goes back to, if you are looking for a new position, at this point, you know, I was just on a call with my district president prior to this, and what she said is very true. If you're looking for a job right now, you're going to find a job. It's really not going to be an issue. So it is, I think this just goes to, it is a great time to be looking, but also as an employer, you need to know who your competition is. You need to know there is competition out there. Again, I know Patrick said this, but every placement that I have made, I think almost without fail, has been in the last month, has been a multiple offer situation or come very close to it, frankly. So just something to think about. So over half, closer to 60%, will hire for new permanent positions in the first half of 2022, and only 33% are hiring for vacated roles. So that's a good thing, obviously. So a lot of these positions are open not due to turnover, but due to just increased business demands. And I would say that's accurate with what we're seeing. I would say the majority of the positions that we're getting are not necessarily related just to straight turnover. And then 58%, so again, close to 60%, are going to increase the number of contract workers in their department as well. So again, if that's something that you're looking to do for whatever reason, you're looking at that contingency labor force, you have to move even faster than on the direct hire side, because that pool is even more limited than what we're working with. So Patrick, if you want to move to the next slide. So in terms of hiring, of course, I think it's still a pretty unbelievable, these statistics are pretty unbelievable. I mean, I think Patrick and I feel this every day, but it is kind of incredible to actually see this in our survey results. Nearly 100%, I mean, we are over 90% are talking about having difficulty finding skilled, you know, professionals in various specialties, specifically, you know, in the legal field. So, you know, looking at legal research and analysis, document review, management, data entry, and word processing. And then on the corporate side, contract management, data entry and extraction, and compliance. So I think that's something, you know, really important to note, that number is close to 100% are having challenges, which is really pretty amazing. And then 87% are worried that they are going to lose people in those spaces on top of that, which again, I think is a very real concern. And that's why we're hopefully talking to you about some of the things today that you can do to increase the likelihood that that won't happen to you. Next slide, Patrick. And so, you know, if you are thinking about looking at your options, you're in good company. Nearly half are going to look for different jobs. Again, the remote work is coming up here. You know, I think the close to 50% is more in line with what I'm seeing. But again, I mean, I would really say it's even higher in the legal industry in terms of the percentage of people that are looking and that approach me because they are looking for a more flexible option, I would say. But I would say that 50% is probably a bit more accurate, again, based on what I'm seeing just locally within the legal market. And candidates are feeling good. I think this is a huge shift from the end of last year to beginning of this year, and this is a bit of a soapbox for me. I think candidates this year, they know that they have options. They know that they're in the driver's seat. And so that has really impacted things as far as, they're not afraid to turn down an offer if it doesn't have the components they're really looking for. They're not afraid to quit their job right now, if something is really just not working for them. So I think that's a huge shift from Q4 of last year coming into Q1, Q2 of this year. So just kind of want to flag that for folks. And then, employers have their own ideas about working from home. So versus what employees would see. So according to this, 66% want workers in office on a full-time remote basis, or a full-time basis. So you can see that based on the statistics we were sharing earlier of 50% of folks wanting more flexibility when it comes to remote work, you can see there's a real disconnect there. So I think that is important to know. And I think that kind of shows you why it is that you can increase your talent pool so much, because so many places are not offering enough remote work options for employees. So if you're able to do that, that does really increase your talent pool. Only 18% want to allow remote work on a part-time basis. 15% would let employees decide, and 1% are just going fully remote. So I guess I would say in the legal industry, and specifically in the corporate legal space, honestly, I would say it's less than 66% that want people in the office on a full-time basis. I would say it actually is significantly lower than that, again, specifically for the areas that Patrick and I cover. So that is just something to keep in mind.
Also, I would just add it's real quick. I think based on some conversations that I've had, there is sort of like a tone out there where if you're a little bit more experienced, had worked for a company for a little while, have proven yourself, you have a lot more, more of a case to be full-time remote. You're further along in career versus like kind of the younger associates of a law firm, for example. I think there is an element of mentoring, that I think is very valuable to a young attorney coming out of law school, and working on site. So I do hear that a lot, and I think there's something to that. So it's not a one size fits all, but I do think within this like remote world, it's like, no one's going to dream about going into the office with like sniffles, right? So I think our threshold on that front is a lot different now than it was a couple of years ago. We have the technology to offer up, set people up at home where they can be fully effective. So I think, there is a little bit of like recognition there. And I agree with Marina. It's like, I don't really hear, a ton of people wanting people back full time. Like I hear about it, and it definitely impacts their ability to attract talent, and in job searches that they're conducting. But yeah, that number seems a little bit high.
Yep. All right. And then finally, from employees' perspectives, again, I think we've kind of covered this. They are, flexibility is really important. These numbers are, upwards of 50% in terms of those who want to have some remote flexibility, a fully remote position, or a hybrid position is close to 50%. So I think that's just kind of reflective of everything that we've spoken about. And again, I know slides earlier, it said salary is the number one thing, but again, I would stand behind if you have, as long as your salary is at market, it's gonna come down to I think the remote piece is really going to be huge as folks look to hire based on what I'm hearing. So I think that's everything we have. Any questions that anybody has for us at this time?
I feel like this presentation we should rename it to remote virtual hiring.
Yes.
Definitely a theme throughout. But it's something we're dealing with that we weren't dealing with 3 years ago.
Patrick, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, somebody asked in the chat, do you think any of these trends will reverse in coming years? I would say I've been asked that previously about the remote piece. I don't think so. I honestly think that we have I don't think there's a way to unring the bell. I think people have shown that they can be productive at home. I think it's clear that businesses can thrive with a lot of their employees at home. So I don't see the remote trends reversing, to be totally honest. If there's another trend that you were specifically curious about, definitely feel free to come off mute and ask. But I've been asked a lot about the remote piece.
And I was thinking, just as we were kind of going through these slides, think about, 2 years from now, maybe the unemployment rate ticks up from 4% to 7%, right? Will that change things? Maybe. It's a market, so that would definitely be have an impact if you think about it. If a candidate who's interviewing with you doesn't have these 2 or 3 other options, it's going to probably, then they're going to have to, kind of gravitate to an opportunity where it's in office. But I think what held us back was we had all these technologies that were on the forefront of on the brink of being rolled out, and I think the pandemic was a tipping point for the Teams and things like that, the Zooms. I know we had been doing Skype for Skype interviews for a while at Robert Half. Personally, I didn't really like them. I liked meeting someone and shaking their hand in person, bringing them into the office, grabbing a cup of coffee with them. That was just me. But all these other recruiters really adjusted well to Skype interviews, and it saved our candidates the cost of coming into the city if they lived out in Virginia, where they could just meet a recruiter over Zoom or Skype, and we would be able to work with them. So it's something that we've been doing, and companies were set up. I always said, give me some sort of program on my computer where I could plug in my phone line, because what we do a lot is on the phone, now Teams, and I'll be able to work anywhere. Without that, I always felt more comfortable being in the office and accessing my phone and my messages and that kind of thing. So that technology, I don't know if Robert Half would have rolled that out if it wasn't for this global pandemic.
Yeah. One other question that came up, are you hearing that job seekers are adverse to going to the office part-time early on while getting established with the opportunity for full-time telework in the future? I would say that is something people are generally open to. I've had clients say, hey, we'd like to fly the person in a couple of days a month, or we need to fly them in for quarterly board meetings or something like that, or for training or something like that. I would say those are not things that candidates are adverse to. I think that I generally find that doesn't really change anything if the opportunity long term will be remote.
I agree. No, yeah, none of I I don't get pushback on that. Like it's definitely not like it shifted. Like maybe last year around this time, it was sort of they didn't want to go in the office because they were a little scared. Like they were scared, right? You know, the pandemic was, you know, obviously we're still dealing with it, but last year there was definitely a heightened sense of caution. But now I think they're much more willing to go on, especially to get trained up and meet the team, and then get, you know, have more flexibility once they're, you know, up and running. But it does impact your pool, right? Like we're talking about pool of candidates, right? If you want someone local in DC, but then they can work remotely, you are limiting your pool of candidates geographically. Like there are a lot of searches that we'll conduct. Client will be fine with remote work, you know, remote workers, which means we can recruit in North Carolina or West Virginia or Ohio, you know, Alabama, Tennessee for DC-based jobs. And a lot of times different markets, you know, we all know DC is a pretty expensive city from a cost of living standpoint. Like that impacts the salary, right? So you are up against a decision where, you know, you could have this, you know, employee for, you know, maybe $20,000 less in a different city, but they're supporting you fully remotely. So that's some of the decisions I think that are out there being made.
The next question was, what trends are we seeing with respect to GC and division council type opportunities? I would just say, at least what we're seeing, and this may be in part in the client base that we play the most in, which is probably small and mid-sized business. But a lot of folks are, as people are reevaluating their businesses, we're seeing a lot bringing in their first general counsel. So looking at, you know, companies that have farmed things heavily out to outside counsel. So we're seeing more of those types of opportunities, I would say. But again, that may be somewhat related to the space that we tend to do most of our business in. Patrick, I don't know if you have any thoughts on your end.
I would just say in a lot, it's a higher level role, right? Like, you know, a lot goes into it. I would say most executive search firms handle those types of roles versus what Marina and I do. Most are like are contingency based, right? Like we don't get collect a fee unless we actually place someone. Where there are agencies, and Robert Half does this as well. They are hired for retainer to go out and find a general counsel. And I know that they're much busier in that space right now than they were a couple of years ago. And it's more of a longer process, right? It can be like 2 to 3 months, but they're more proactive, right? They don't have a pool of candidates that they're working with. They'll talk to the client, find out what the client wants, and then they'll pinpoint. Then they'll conduct a search and find people mainly through LinkedIn. So that's, you know, for anyone looking at that level, it's a call to arms to make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and looks good, because that's where they find a lot of the people, and they try to match their clients up with that higher level profile.
Yep. I think we got one last question. I think we're going to be at time. Are you seeing a preference for local candidates when the position is remote, or is it truly a nationwide search? Yes, yes, we do see a preference, because obviously you don't have to pay to put somebody on an airplane typically that lives in Richmond and is going to come to DC if they need to for a board meeting or a training or whatever it is. So yes, I think we do see a preference, but if they've made the decision typically to go to 100% remote, I don't see it being a particularly strong preference, if that makes sense. Like if I've got a great candidate from North Carolina, I've not seen that be like the deal breaker, like it's something that like tipped the scale one way or the other. So hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, great. Well, I think we are at time. So now we must conclude today's seminar. On behalf of our chapter, I'd like to extend our thanks to Patrick and Marina for speaking today. As I mentioned earlier, there is no continuing education credit offered for today's program, but we hope you found it valuable and informative. Please complete our feedback survey to let us know what you thought about this program. And as you may have seen in the chat, the slide deck's available as a link in your communication reminder email, and also will be available in our post-event email requesting your feedback. We hope to see everybody in person later this year. Until then, stay safe and healthy, and thanks for joining us today.